Welcome to all of you. I'm glad you came. I'm Julia Cato. I'm the current chair of the Berkeley Tenants Union Steering Committee, and I welcome you all. As you know, our primary focus is the rights and protections of tenants, although we do ally with housing justice organizations because we also believe and support housing justice.
Oh, Julia, you froze.
We are broadening our alliance. What?
Go ahead. Sorry.
Now I forgot what I was going to say. At any rate, we're broadening our alliance and include people who are working for housing justice, which its broad definition is the belief that all people have the right to housing that is safe and secure and decent, that they can afford, and that further they deserve the respect of those who own and or manage that housing. To that end, we have a speaker today with us from the Berkeley Housing Authority. And for those of you who are not familiar with the Berkeley Housing Authority, it administers almost 2,000 subsidized rental housing units through Section 8 voucher programs and moderate rehab single occupancy programs. Today we have with us Chris Schultz, who's a member of the board of BHA. I hope I've got that correct. And who is going to talk to us about the new nonprofit arm of BHA called Affordable Housing Berkeley, Inc. Chris, welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for inviting me. And I also took the liberty to also invite our executive director, Rachel Gonzalez-Levine, who's on as well. But yes, my name's Chris Schultz. I know many of you. Good to see friendly faces. And we're just invited to share a little bit about last summer during COVID, right, during shelter in place. So we've been still meeting as a board of the Berkeley Housing Authority, but it's been online via Zoom. All of that is posted on the website. The Zoom link to participate in those meetings are open for everybody. Last summer we did incorporate a nonprofit, Affordable Housing Berkeley, and so was really excited. Paula Leverde has come to our Housing Authority meetings. We've been trying to get the word out about this nonprofit. And so we're really excited to be here to be able to tell you all just a little bit about it. I'm going to speak as a board member. So I was appointed by our current mayor, Jesse Arreguin, and confirmed by the City Council. I've completed almost my first term, 4 years, on the board of the Housing Authority, and currently serve as vice chair. When we incorporated the nonprofit, decided that it would be the same board members who would serve for the nonprofit. So I also serve on the board of our nonprofit. And the Housing Authority is BHA and the nonprofit is AHB. If you get confused, that's okay. So I'll say a little bit about why the board decided to do this, to create the nonprofit. And then I actually invited Rachel on to join because she's done these presentations before. She has just a few slides to share to give a quick highlights about the Housing Authority and about the nonprofit as well, that I thought would be of interest to the group. But I'll just say very briefly that for us as a housing authority, there were really 3 driving things that we'd been struggling with since before I joined the board. But we felt like the nonprofit would help us with achieving. So the first one, always first and foremost, is fulfilling our mission, right? That our mission is to provide for very low income, extremely low income households. So people and families who make 30% of AMI or less, or up to 50% of AMI, but most of our tenants are 30% AMI or less, or zero income. But really to provide ensure that they can live in our community, right? And we do that through our vouchers. Rachel will talk about some of the different programs that we have, but we really felt like we could do more to maximize on that mission. The second piece related to that is that we have resources that we can use, and we felt like we weren't using to their full potential, right? One is our vouchers, in particular our project-based vouchers, which is means vouchers that are used on the units. So they go to development projects, either acquisition or new construction. And the other is that we have proceeds from the sales of our public housing units about 10, 15 years ago now. And those proceeds, without getting too much in the weeds of it, HUD would allow us to use those proceeds to invest in the creation of more affordable housing if we chose to do so. And we would like to figure out how to do so. But the third piece that's kind of a barrier for us is that we have not been in a financial position right now, or for many years, to be able to do this, that we have been running budget deficits kind of due to the way that HUD structurally underinvests in housing authorities, which we could talk ad nauseum about. But essentially, we do not get enough funding from HUD to fully pay for our costs. And so we'd actually have been, for many years, not this last year, but many years had been actually dipping into some of those proceeds of the sale of those public housing units in order to cover for our budget. And so we wanted to try to figure out, is there a way that we could make more revenue, such as through fees or something as a nonprofit that we could use in order to be fiscally sustainable so that we can continue to do our work into the future. So those were kind of the three things that we'd been struggling with ever since I joined the board. And then last summer we decided the best thing that we could do is on all three of those things is create this nonprofit. I'll turn it over to Rachel. And again, she has just a couple of slides, and then we're happy to open it up for questions. Now, Rachel, are you able to share your screen?
Thank you so much, Chris. Yes, I think I can. Oh, it says host disabled participant screen sharing. So
let me, Rachel, make you a co-host.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
You now have the co-hosting ability.
Okay, can you all see my screen here?
Yes.
Awesome. So thank you so much, Chris, for the introduction. I've been with BHA for almost 14 years, and I have to say our board is amazing. I'm so honored to work alongside Chris and our other board members, including two of our program participants who joined the board. One who has been with us for a long time and another who recently joined us. And we have a really strong, amazing board, and it's an honor to serve alongside them here in Berkeley. So thank you so much, Chris, for everything you've done to help shepherd and guide BHA and this new entity called AHB, Affordable Housing Berkeley. I just wanted to share, as Chris mentioned, a few snapshots of our programs, plural, and then we can open it up to questions. So as Chris mentioned, our primary program that we operate is the Housing Choice Voucher tenant-based Section 8 program. Where Chris mentioned also, I'm sorry to repeat some of this, but households pay 30% of their adjusted income towards rent. We pay the remaining rent to the landlord. Program participants are between 0 and 50% of the area median income. The next little check mark here, a family of 4, the max for 30% is $41,100. We do have a substantial number of folks who are actually at 0% income or working to get general assistance or SSI. And then the maximum income that we can serve is 50% AMI. Just for some context, that comes out to $68,500 a year for a family of 4. So still very, low numbers here in our high cost area of Berkeley and the Bay Area in general. Our program participants bring significant, not only socioeconomic diversity to Berkeley, but also demographically, backgrounds. Here you'll see 69% are African American, 22% Caucasian, 7% Latino Hispanic, 2% Asian Pacific Islander, and Native Alaskan. BHA pays on average $16.45 a month. I would actually venture to say that this number has gone up slightly since the last time I checked. And then the average client rent portion to the landlord is $472, which is, again, 30% of their income. So that, that's a really amazing benefit to the program. Where in the world are you going to find, where in Berkeley or the Bay Area, I should say, will you find rent for $472? So it's a really awesome program subsidizing our clients who otherwise would not be able to afford living here. And then another really great benefit is this little last check mark here. It's the last point I want to make about the tenant-based program, but it's not to be undermined in terms of the importance and value. So the subsidy that we pay as a housing authority on behalf of our clients will increase or decrease when there are household income changes. So most significantly recently, we've had, with COVID and the pandemic, people's income has been decreased significantly, or job loss has occurred. That allows us to increase the subsidy paid on behalf of the client to the landlord. So it's a fluctuating number, all dependent on what that client household income is at the time that they report it to us. And so it's a safety net. It's a safety net program that allows people to not only afford living in Berkeley, but continue to afford where there are income changes that are, not where they won't have amounts to pay their prior amount that was determined. So it fluctuates, and that's a really, really awesome aspect of the program. I want to turn now to the project-based Section 8 program, where the assistance is tied to the unit. So in terms of the way the rent calculation is determined, it's the same exact way as the tenant-based program. However, the assistance is tied to the unit. So in the tenant-based side that we just discussed, the family gets a voucher and they look for the unit that they wish to rent. On the project-based side, the assistance is tied to the unit. HUD allows housing authorities to place 30%. It's actually with an additional 10%. No, I'm sorry, 30% is the max. We can do 30% of our vouchers towards low-income housing developments here in Berkeley, where the assistance, again, is tied to the unit, and there are long-term contracts up to 40 years where we enter into contract with nonprofit developers here in Berkeley. Right now, we have almost 500 project-based vouchers in use or committed to 24 properties throughout the city. Another really wonderful thing about the project-based program is that when there are market fluctuations where, let's say, the market is going crazy and the rents are just unaffordable, our long-term contracts in those units allow the rents to stay stable. So these rents in these units are not impacted by market fluctuations, which is really awesome. On the tenant-based side, let's say one of our clients moves out of that unit and the landlord thinks they can get higher rent for that vacated unit. The housing authority has nothing to do with what the landlord determines. But on the project-based side, there is the guarantee of up to 40 years for that contract to be in place. And again, these are nonprofit developers who have a commitment to also maintaining rents that are affordable. The other great thing about the project-based program is that it allows nonprofit developers to leverage other funding streams because of the guaranteed funding source that the project-based vouchers provide the owners of those buildings and those units. And it's seen as a critical portion or part of the complex affordable housing puzzle. So I'm going to move on to a couple of other really awesome programs that we have here at BHA. The SRO single room occupancy, mod rehab. Oh, someone is in the waiting room. I'm going to admit them. Single room occupancy program. We have 98 units here in Berkeley in 2 properties along University Ave, kind of right next door to each other, UA Homes and Erna P. Harris. Those are not vouchers, but what's really awesome about them is they provide on-site services, and those are folks who are coming off the streets and they are, or tents or wherever they're living in their cars, homeless and disabled folks who are moving into shelter. And we have 98 of those units here in Berkeley. We also have some special programs for veterans, the VASH program. The VASH program, we have 40 of those, and we have a partnership with the VA and Berkeley Food and Housing Project to get those veterans leased up. We also have a program called Mainstream Vouchers, which is also for homeless and disabled people. We have a really strong partnership with the City and County Homeless Coordinated Entry System, BACS, Berkeley Mental Health, Women's Daytime Drop-In Center, East Bay Innovations, and Center for Independent Living. Those last 2 entities work specifically with disabled individuals or families. And then the last program, before we move on to some quick bullet points about AHB, I think I hear a little background noise. If people could maybe mute themselves. I'm almost done, I promise. Project Move Up. So in the Shelter Plus Care program, which the Berkeley, City of Berkeley operates, and the Mod Rehab program, which I just shared with you, the 98 units, we do allow people to get vouchers 10 per year in a pilot program. And we're now in the 3rd year. And so that's where people are ready to graduate to more independence and live in the community with a voucher. So those are the BHA programs. I will give you a little bit more about AHB, and then we can open it up for questions. So as Chris mentioned, we are a newly formed nonprofit development entity, and we were established, AHB was established to both produce affordable housing units and to support BHA's operations. And in 2014, we transitioned our 75 units of low-income public housing to the project-based program, which I just mentioned. So long-term contracts for those 75 units with Berkeley 75, which is Related Companies, is the parent organization of Berkeley 75. The proceeds from the sale of those units are to be used, as Chris mentioned, for developing affordable housing here in Berkeley. Again, the 2 boards are one and the same at this point, and AHB has embarked on a strategic planning process to determine where are we going to start, what type of project will we embark upon for AHB when we get our tax exempt status, which should be in 5 months or so. And then some ideas that we have discussed and the board has discussed for the utilization of the disposition proceeds. So the disposition is the HUD term for removing housing stock from the low-income program, public housing program, to the project-based program. The proceeds from that sale will go to whatever the board determines is the right direction, whatever kind of development. And right now they are in a strategic planning phase. We are in a strategic planning phase. Some of the ideas are construction of new units, acquisition rehab, master tenant leasing, modular construction perhaps, more to follow in the months ahead. And the board has been clear that we would like to solicit input from the community. And so this group is a perfect way to garner your input on where you think AHB should head in, what direction should we head into for perhaps our first. Throw out all your ideas, and we will certainly share with the rest of the board when you want to share. I am going to turn it back over to Chris or Paola, and I guess we can open it up for questions.
Sure. Thank you. Julia, well, if anybody has any questions, I would ask that they raise their hands. I see some hands going up.
Well, can we take down the screen so we can see people?
Yeah. So if Rachel, if you can stop sharing your screen.
I will try. Oh, yes, there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, now who's got a hand up? Okay, I see John.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chris and Rachel, for coming to our meeting and also for the presentation. A lot of good information there. We have a change in administration in Washington, not just at the presidential level, maybe more importantly, the Senate and House are both Democratic. Do you anticipate any change? HUD has a reputation, whether this is merited or not. I mean, I've been involved in housing issues for quite a while, and HUD has a reputation of being Byzantine and maybe arbitrary at times, or difficult to navigate at the very least. Do you anticipate any changes in Washington regarding funding for housing, public housing, affordable housing, anything that would help what your mission is and what our mission is to some degree as well?
You want to take that, or should I take it, Chris?
I'll just say, I think that's a really great question and something that many of us are working on. I know that the Housing Authority, like the member organization we belong to, NARO, that's something that they are advocating for more funding. One thing that that I think is important to recognize is, in part because of how high rents are here and how poor HUD's formulas are, we could, in theory, HUD allows us to have over 1,800 vouchers out on the streets, but they don't give us enough funding to be able to put all those vouchers out. We only have around 1,580, 1,570
Right.
On the streets. So even just if they were to increase our budget tomorrow, which some of this COVID money, we might be able to get some of that, we could immediately start putting more vouchers out on the street. And hopefully that might happen in the short term, and the more long term, hopefully that there will be an expansion. I know the Biden administration and many of the Congress people are very interested in expanding the voucher program to be a more of an entitlement program. Right now across the country, only about 1 in 4 tenants who are eligible for a voucher actually receive them. And our wait list, the Berkeley wait list is easy 10 years long. And so there might be some momentum on Congress's side. I'll say, and I know that there's some folks on this call who are interested in social housing, land trusts and co-ops and so forth. And so I'm very interested in, and in part of my day job at PolicyLink, we are doing advocacy around ensuring that more federal dollars that do flow to housing authorities have at least flexibility, so that they're not just providing more subsidy for a private housing market, but could actually be used to invest in some of these more community ownership and nonprofit models of housing, which I do think project-based vouchers would facilitate us doing that. But yeah, anything you want to add to that, Rachel?
I think you did a great job. I would just say that HUD has indicated that they will allocate a small number of COVID-related vouchers to housing authorities. We don't expect a huge allocation. We hope to hear very soon. Within a month, we should know how many BHA will be getting. But you know, it's all a balancing act. And so, and what I mean by that is, it's awesome for us to have the vouchers, but we also need the units. And so with the guidance of the board, BHA has embarked also upon strengthening our relationships with trying to, with landlords here in Berkeley, and trying to attract and maintain willing property owners who wish to work with us. As Chris mentioned, it's often hard for us to state our case that you know, we have a lengthy wait list and we have people desperately looking for housing to be able to afford living in this amazing community. But if our, you know, on the tenant-based side in particular, if we're not competitive, then it doesn't matter. And so we're strengthening internal, you know, communications with our landlords. We're trying to market, you know, we're trying really hard to, again, maintain that balancing act. And I think that's where I'll.
Okay, any other further questions?
Julia, so there's a stack that I'm putting in the chat. So Miss Daya was next on stack.
Okay,
Thank
is that
you.
you?
How's everyone? I'm speaking as a Section 8 voucher recipient and Berkeley graduate, worked all my life, had to go on Section 8 because I had a kidney transplant. And I'm speaking on the discrimination. Now, when I speak with someone concerning looking for a 1-bedroom apartment, and I tell them, you know, Berkeley graduate, I can pay the rent, all that. And as soon as I bring up Section 8, I hear nothing else, you know, oh no, we don't have anything available, but I'm just speaking with someone who says they have something available. And that's my concern. The place that I'm living at now, I would not have lived here if I could have afforded it myself. And it's just discriminated when you find out that you have the money to pay the rent, but the agency or the property manager or the owner won't allow you to move into the property. And so I just want to speak on how do you help someone in this type of situation? I've directed a lot of people to your agency, and when they speak with you guys or speak with someone, you know, they leave with the same opinion that they come in. What do I do now? And I just want to find out information on that.
Can I speak to that, Chris?
Thank you.
Ms. Michaels, I'm so sorry that you encountered that, and I'm, you know, frankly, it's not shocking. It should be shocking, but it's not, and I'm so sorry that has happened to you and that has been your experience. So you're probably aware of the source of income discrimination ordinance here in Berkeley. I will say we are proactively working with the city to determine and ways to strengthen the enforcement of that law. And I've done quite a bit of training myself of landlords where I have heard of the same kind of, you know, discriminatory actions that you just described to property managers and landlords to say, to explain the source of income discrimination law. And so really what it is against the law here in Berkeley, as well as the state, to first of all, advertise in any advertisement for a unit that Section 8 vouchers are not accepted. That's against the law. 2, it's also against the law for them to not count the value of the voucher as the income of the applicant. And so that will really boost, because a lot of times what they do is they screen you and they state you have to make 2 or 3 times the rent in order to even qualify. And it gives a boost to voucher holder applicants to be able to count the value of the voucher as you're making that application. And so those are the 2 biggies in terms of the source of income discrimination ordinance. I will also say on our website, we have a link, and I will be happy to share it with Paula or whomever to send that out to you, where people can document. I'm sorry?
I said, please.
Yes, I will do that. Where people can document what their experience was, and we will send that right off to the city attorney's office. So again, it's a bit of a work in progress. We are communicating with the city office, the city departments that are most involved over there, and we hope to strengthen the enforcement mechanisms of that ordinance very soon. But yes, I appreciate that you shared that, and I will share the link.
So there's nothing that's set in place now that could help someone in my position who's trying to move, who's trying to get in an area that's safe, comfortable, and a better type of living situation, rather.
There is. So the ordinance is active. It's
Oh, great.
yeah, it's already been voted upon by the council, and it's already in place. What I was saying is that the enforcement mechanism of the ordinance needs to be strengthened a little bit, but as you're encountering discrimination while you're looking, please document that on the link. We will be sure to send it over to the city attorney's office and continue to determine how to strengthen the enforcement. I know that they have sent a letter out to at least one, maybe several landlords that had in the advertisements no Section 8, and they sent a cease letter. And so there, in addition to the city, there's also a state level ordinance or law, it wouldn't be an ordinance, and the state has another reporting mechanism that you can utilize as well to indicate, and I can send both of those links to you so that the landlord is made aware that what they're doing is discriminatory. The other thing, you know, Ms. Michaels, in advocating for yourself, you could go in armed with the actual language and say, I know you are supposed to count, including the income I have, the value of the voucher.
That doesn't work.
Well, that's what the
Doesn't
law
work.
says. So if they say, no, we're not going to, you know what, call me, email me directly.
Okay.
Okay? I would be happy to follow up myself.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go next because time is coming short. Thank you very much. I do have a couple questions. And thank you, Rachel, for the presentation, and Chris. So I know that the BHA did a survey earlier this year of BPOA participants, landlords. And I saw that the results came out, but I never read them. I was sharing them with someone. So can you share with us what are because I know that you're saying you're trying to reach out. You wanna get more vouchers on the street, but are landlords biting? So can you share the results of that survey?
Yeah, and in fact, I can email you the section of my report to our board, BHA's board, that described all of the details in that. Interestingly, about 50% of the respondents didn't know where to begin. They wouldn't have any idea where to begin working with BHA. And so that's not good. We want to make sure that they know, if they're willing to work with us, how to start. And so we're working on hiring staff here who can be like a landlord liaison and help them through the process, and strengthening our website so that there's a go-to link for landlords who really want to know how to start. Some of them also complained of challenges with some of their tenancies, but you know what? There are challenging tenancies across the board, whether you're a voucher holder or not. And so that wasn't, to me, that's not super valid. And so some did complain of also that our payment standard, which is the maximum amount of rent we can pay for a household with a voucher, is too low, and there's just no way they can afford to accept our payment standard. And I know Chris had spoken about the fact that HUD is not funding housing authorities in the way we should, where we live in such a high cost area, right? So those are the biggies, Paola. Again, I'm happy to share that with you as well later on, more details.
Okay, before we go any further, I'd like to ask Dia a question. Would you like a witness to go with you the next time? You're
That would be
muted.
great. That would be great.
We'll contact the Berkeley Tennis Union and one of us will go with you.
Okay, great. I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, moving on.
We have one more question. It's Carol.
Carol.
Morosophic has one more question.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you. First, my computer has gone on and off, so I'm not sure if you may have responded to this question, but I don't believe you did. There are a number of vouchers that are coming in through the American Rescue Plan Act. My understanding is that they're short-term subsidies instead of long-term subsidies. But they have not been, but we do not yet know the length of the subsidies. They're not age related or related to, well, they're not the way the NED vouchers were, which were age restricted and restricted to individuals. They can go to individuals and families. I want to know, first of all, if you had any additional information about those vouchers, and those vouchers are targeted towards homelessness, as were the NED vouchers. And if you have information, if the same amount of NED vouchers will be coming in, which came in during the last administration for the last 2 years, I believe it was, if you can give us the number of those, as well as the number of Shelter Plus certificates. So we'd be getting both the NED vouchers and the American Recovery Act vouchers. Second, I want to speak to the source of income discrimination enforcement. This has been an issue that I personally have taken on through the Homeless Commission for the last couple of years. We passed a recommendation a couple of years ago, which did go to council earlier this year and passed on the consent calendar, actually over staff's objection, because they felt they didn't have the resources to do it, to put into place an enforcement mechanism, a procedure. And because it, as you stated, it has been the law since 2017 in Berkeley that you cannot discriminate against people with vouchers or any other subsidies, and state law since 2019. So nobody has been tracking these. I mean, I personally would receive people's stories, and you know, I stopped.
Is there a question here, Carol? Because our time is running short. So do you have a question about that?
Actually, I would like to know if the Housing Authority will begin tracking these reports of individuals, because
Thank you.
As well as the original question, because that's a part of the problem. The city is going to put in now an administrative procedure. It's been sent to the city manager to modify the ordinance, because before this, it was only available through enforcement through a private
jurisdiction. Okay, Carol, thank you. Let's let Rachel or Chris answer.
Okay, I'll be very brief. I know that we have taken a lot of your time already. So Carol, the source of income question that you had, yes, we are tracking. As I said, there's an online form, and every time someone identifies that they've been discriminated against, it's in their search for housing, it goes to the city attorney's office as well as to the housing authority. So yes, we are. That's the short answer. Your question about mainstream vouchers, which is, it used to be called the NED program. We now call it the mainstream. So we have 91 of those vouchers here in Berkeley, and those are ongoing. They're not anticipated to, there's no sunset date as far as we know at this point. The American Recovery Act vouchers are the ones that I had mentioned earlier that HUD will indicate sometime next month how many each housing authority across the country will be getting. They are, when someone leases up with those vouchers, they can utilize them as long as they need to, but the vouchers will be sunset in, I want to say 2023. I need to double check that. It's 23 or 24. I'm not certain off the top of my head. And what that means is any family that leases up utilizing those new set of vouchers is welcome to utilize it as long as they need it. It could be for the rest of their life if they need it. But for the Housing Authority, if we are not able to have people lease up in Berkeley by 2023, we lose those vouchers. And if the family gives up the voucher in 23 or 24, that voucher then is gone. So it's a kind of a hybrid of what you were indicating. It's not that we stop assistance cold on the day that it sunsets. It's that if the family gives up the assistance, then the voucher goes away. I hope that makes sense.
Okay. I have one quick question. At least I hope it's a yes/no question. When you sold the property, you talked about the properties that you sold, and since I didn't recognize the entities that they were sold to, was there some kind of guarantee that those properties would remain affordable or low-income housing in perpetuity?
Yes, so we are under a project-based contract for all of those units with Berkeley 75. The contract can go up to 40 years. However, the ground lease, I believe, is 99-year ground lease for perpetuity, in perpetuity. So yes, the answer is
Okay.
they will be.
Okay. Thank you very much for your.
Julie, I had a question. I was on
Matthew
staff.
was in the stack.
Okay, quick question.
Yeah, so my question is, I guess mostly aimed at Chris, because he'll know, I think, more of what I'm talking about. Chris, as I'm sure you're aware, given your status also as a planning commissioner, the Berkeley Tenants Union has, for the past few years, been strongly advocating for the city to go to supplement traditional deep affordable housing projects to start developing mixed income social housing based on the model put forth by the People's Policy Project's white paper, which I'm posting in the chat, because since it's revenue neutral, it can be done without raising taxes, meaning it can be done like at any scale imaginable, including to the extent that it could be used to replace private developers and produce more affordable housing than we get with any private developer. Is Build Affordable Berkeley considering like implementing this model in the sort of medium term? Because that, I think, would be an important way to produce more additional affordable units in the city of Berkeley.
Yeah.
And ideally on a significant large scale.
Great question. I don't think that we've gotten far enough in our strategic planning to see how a mixed income projects would work with our requirements from HUD in terms of the level of income that we need to serve with our project-based vouchers and with the proceeds of our sales. That being said, Matthew, if you haven't yet, I highly recommend you look at the City Council about a month ago or so passed a resolution to explore creating a joint powers authority to do revenue bonding for mixed income housing as a part of the strategy for affordable housing production at the BART stations. So I don't know if you've been tracking that. It's something that the consultant recommended that is a model that state law enables cities to do. So I'd recommend you check that out. Yeah.
Thank you. I'll look for that item unless you're able to send it me, because I was actually advocating forming a JPA to issue the revenue bonds quite a while ago. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you both for joining us and presenting today. It was very helpful. And moving along now, the next person. Okay.
Oh, so
feel free
Julia,
to come back when you have more information.
Julia, I have one important announcement that we discussed earlier, which is everybody who's here on the call should please sign in. We're posting right now we just posted in the chat the sign-in form, which please fill out so that we know you're here and we can record your attendance, which is important because it can affect your voting rights if you're a member. So please fill that out. ASAP so that we know you're here.
Okay,
Uh,
that's it.
Where is this form? I don't see it.
I
It's
just
in the
posted.
chat.
I just posted it in the chat.
Matthew, if some folks are calling in, how would they let us?
We only have one or two folks. Maybe John, can you get me their info after the meeting?
Okay. Okay. Our next speaker is John Solosky. He's speaking on 1921 Walnut Street, and he's introducing other speakers on that subject. John is a member of the steering committee of BTU. He's also a rent board commissioner and a former chair of the rent board commission. John.
Thank you, Julia. Excuse me. Gotta clear my throat here. Hey, Chris and Rachel, thank you for that presentation, by the way. That was really very informative. I am, thanks, Julia, for the introduction. I don't have to say anything else about myself, except that I've been working with the tenants at 1921 Walnut Street for, it's about a year now. UC Berkeley bought the property, 1921 Walnut. It's in the corner of what will become the Gateway Project, it's that whole block where, what is it, the old Ace? Is it the old Ace Hardware? And in that area, right? That whole block.
It's in a different block.
No,
Mike,
it's actually across
where
the
Mike
street. Maybe
Spikes
part
is.
of it may be across the street, but yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. The old bicycle shop there and the parking lot, that area on University. Anyway, UC Berkeley bought 1921 Walnut over a year ago. They are rent controlled units. There are 8, possibly 10 units. I know 8 units are occupied. There may be more than the 8 occupied units, but I believe there are 8 occupied units with long-term tenants, rent controlled units. One tenant has been there 25 years. Several have been there 10 or 12 years or longer. UC Berkeley wants to include this in their project for market rate transfer student housing in that whole area. Okay, let me say that again. Market rate housing, transfer student housing. None of us are denying the need for student housing. However, displacing long-term Berkeley residents with stable, affordable housing to build student housing is just, it's wrong on so many levels. And it's not, again, UC Berkeley is not demonstrating that it's a good neighbor in any sense of the word. Did somebody say something? I want to introduce Paul Wallace and Natalie Lagouche, who are tenants there, and they've been there 10 or 12 years in rent-controlled housing. UC Berkeley has sent out notices saying that they do plan to develop the site. They expect that starting June or soon after, they will all be receiving notices to leave, to vacate. And these would be 90-day notices under UC Berkeley's policies. At this point, nothing we have said or done seems to have stopped or halted UC Berkeley's plans. And we've done a lot and contacted many, many, many elected people, many, many organizations. So I'm going to turn it over to Paul and Natalie to fill in the blanks and let you folks know where they stand right now, because I don't have an update as of the last couple of weeks or so. So if there's anything I'm missing here, please fill in and let us know what's going on, Paul and Natalie. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John, for that introduction. We're both here on video and phone. It's not unified, so I'm sorry it's a little bit confusing. But that was a great introduction to the situation, John. Thank you very much. So like John was saying, we're 1921 Walnut Street is in downtown Berkeley. It's a 112-year-old building, rent controlled. There are several long-term tenants, 25 plus years for 3 different units. I've been there 11 years. Paul, how long have you been there?
Almost 6 years.
6 years. And just like John said, UC purchased the building with the intent of demolishing it to build market rate, student only housing. So they're destroying affordable housing to create market rate housing. They're destroying inclusive housing that anybody can live in to create just student housing. And it's devastating, of course, to us tenants personally. In terms of the larger issue, you know, they would be permanently removing these rent-controlled units from Berkeley affordable housing stock, which is a tragedy for everybody, and an awful precedent for UC to be setting. And we have gotten news from UC that as soon as the moratorium lifts, they plan to evict us. We don't want to go. We're fighting as hard as we can, and we will do whatever we can to save our homes.
Yeah, a couple of things. Prior to purchasing the building, there were 6 parcels in the block. UC had planned to develop the other 5 parcels into student housing, and when the opportunity arose, it purchased the building that we live in to incorporate that into the development as the 6th parcel in the block. So there was a plan to develop the other 5 parcels and leave 1921 Walnut in place. And there's no other residential in that in the remaining 5 blocks, 5 parcels on the block. If any other developer wanted to do this, they would be shown the road. The big issue for us is that not only can UC take affordable housing stock, rent control stock from the Berkeley housing market, but it also sets a precedent for any other place that UC has the ability to do that, where they have campuses and there is rent controlled accommodation in that city. So there's quite a few precedents here. We also have the SB 330 in play, where the Housing Crisis Act of 2020, if any other developer came to do this, it would not be allowed to do that. And we feel that UC is basically just pulling its weight and pulling rank here as it relates to 1921 Walnut.
And also what Paul touched upon there, like UC has several locations where it can build housing. I mean, it recently came out that they're going to build a parking lot pretty adjacent to our lot. So UC has several other parcels they can use to build housing. They don't have to build on this parcel. They can build around our building, as was the original plan. So it's, you know, a completely unethical choice for UC to demolish existing housing in order to build new housing. You know, we all know that Berkeley needs housing, and we believe in development that does not displace people. Yeah, I think that's a pretty good summary. I don't know if anybody has any questions, or do you have something to say, Paul?
No, did we miss anything, John?
I think that was the nuts and bolts. There's a lot more, and there's some complications, but that's it in a nutshell. And thank you both for coming today, by the way.
Can I ask a question? I know that the university is taking public comment. Do you guys have the details about? I believe that on the 21st is the deadline to take public comment.
Yes, we have commented publicly at every available opportunity. The real problem is that UC does not substantially take those comments into consideration. I called in at the last meeting. I've submitted those public comments. They're not addressed. But you're right, Paula. Like, I appreciate you bringing that up, and that's a really good point. I think the more people comment, I think the louder our voices are together, the more they can't ignore us. So it would be great, actually, if we could, perhaps if BTU would help us to organize public comment there.
And let me interject. That's the long range development plan that's currently on the table. And yes, Paula, you're right. I think it's Wednesday is the deadline.
Yeah, so
5 p.m. Wednesday. But you can look for the long range development plan.
thank you.
Matthew, are you trying to speak?
Yes. I just wanted to add two things. One is I want to correct something John said. John said it's going to be market rate development. Not market rate development. It's above market it's above market rate rents. I've looked at what you see. I've looked at what you see rents are in an apartment style and gone. I've looked at apartment style housing, which doesn't include a meal plan, and I found that it is above. It's higher rent than what is charged in nearby areas for apartments. And that's not even something they do at other UCs. At other UCs, it's still high, but it's not above market rate. So UC Berkeley is particularly bad. The second thing is important to note is that the university isn't doing this to meet demands of students. Students have been saying for 5 years, that the university needs to not eliminate rent-controlled housing when they develop new housing. And when they did that as soon as when they passed the referendum to build more housing, they immediately passed a resolution saying, but to be clear, this does not mean targeting rent-controlled units, for instance, for elimination. And just on Wednesday, the ASCC Senate, which is the UC Berkeley student government, passed another resolution explicitly saying no to tearing down 1921 Walnut Street. The university doesn't. The university is basically is almost a comic book villain, and they're not doing this because there obviously are some students who don't care, but they're elected representatives of the student body have been saying no. So this is particularly egregious.
Okay. Let's see. Timmy? You have your hand up?
A very quick question. For those involved with 1921 Walnut, does anyone, I emailed and including a CC to you guys. I emailed the clerk and asked, when did the city of Berkeley, the UC Berkeley, I was shocked when I rode my bike in that area and saw that huge area that UC Berkeley owns. When did they actually purchase that whole parcel between Oxford University, Berkeley Way, and Walnut? Does anybody know that history?
I can't give you the date. They owned that whole part. They owned most of that parcel. They've owned it for quite some time. 1921 Walnut was bought somewhat over a year ago. It isn't that a year and a half, maybe about a little over between a year and a half ago. But most of that parcel was previously owned by UC.
1921 was purchased literally a year ago, and it was during the pandemic, which really was shocking to us because it was during the shelter at home earlier phase. It was really difficult to get a hold of anyone at the city, but eventually when we did, we had the full support of the city, the mayor, the rent control board, etc. So we've been really enthused with the way the city has rolled behind us, but they do seem to have their hands tied to a certain extent when it comes to dealing with UC.
Okay, I think we're.
Julia, there was
Igor, yeah.
there was actually a question from Megan in the chat, and then I had a question after that. And Jimmy, is it your hand, or should I take your hand down?
Pardon me?
follow up. I'm gonna.
I just don't understand how they could own that one property when they own that whole parcel and that whole area. I mean, I thought they already owned that whole parcel that included 1921 Walnut.
There are 6 parcels in the block.
No, there were 5 or 6 parcels. 1921 Walnut was not initially one of the parcels. That's a standalone. That was a separate parcel.
Okay, I do not
Separate
think
property.
this is
Like
pertinent.
this is kind of in the weeds a little bit to
Right.
me.
Yeah, there was a
Yeah,
question.
this is not pertinent to the main issue, and we are short of time. So unless you have a substantive question, I'd like to move on to the next speaker.
Julia, there was
Or your hand is still up. Did you
Yes,
have it up?
go up because I'm on Stack, and I also put Megan on Stack, and Stack is being kept in the chat. So Megan was
Well, I would like people to just raise their hands instead of using chat.
okay. Please, if you're on the phone, that's *9 to raise
Well,
your.
they can't use the chat either if they're on the phone.
For future reference, if you're on the phone, please put *9 to raise your hand. But Megan had a question about which press has been notified. And I had a question as a Cal alum. I know this is about money, and I don't think anyone here is made of money, but I've been, and I hate doing this because what I was contributing when I was contributing to my alma mater were programs that help students that are unhoused, but I've actually withheld any alumni contributions since UC started doing that. And I'm wondering if that is a tactic worth pursuing for Cal alumni, of whom there are many, both here and in Berkeley and the community, if that's something that you can comment on.
Well, you have to let them know that why you're doing it.
I have been. They've not been responding, and I don't expect them to. But if 100 people do the same thing and leave the same note I have been, then at least that's strength in numbers.
Thank you so much, Igor, for doing that. I think that's an absolutely wonderful idea because alumni are a really important part of Cal ecosystem. I wonder if we could reach out to like a Cal alumni group. Perhaps we could connect to a group and let people know what's going on, and hopefully they can take a stand like you are, Igor.
Let's connect offline. Cool.
And I would also encourage anybody. I would encourage people to do this tactic, and I would encourage them that if you want to still be helping students, take the money you would have donated to UC Berkeley and instead donate it to the Berkeley Student Cooperative, which provides low-income housing for students and is not controlled by the university, so the university won't be able to use that money to save tenants.
And to answer Megan's question real quick, there has been a good bit of media coverage, Megan.
Okay.
We've had TV from KTVU, Fox Channel 2. We've had SF Chronicle, Berkeley Side, the Daily Californian, East Bay Times. There's been a good bit of media coverage on the issue.
Wow, that's good.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for your update, and we feel that we are trying to do everything we can to stay in solidarity with you, and we hope we save your building. Not only just for you, but for the precedent that it would create for all of us. I to move on now to our next speaker, who is Xavier Johnson, and he's a member of the Rent Board. And Xavier, are you still on HAC?
I am still on HAC. I'm not the chair anymore, but I'm on HAC.
Okay. And he's going to speak on the right to sublease. Take it away.
All right, so I'm here to speak on something that I actually campaigned on, and I'm trying to sort of turn it from a campaign idea into an actual change in the law in the city of Berkeley. So From a standpoint of the Brown Act, I don't know how y'all navigate that usually, because I'm just slightly concerned because we have other commissioners who are here, and eventually this is going to come to a hopefully decision of the board. So I just want to pose that as a as one thing to think about first before we kind of go further.
Maybe
Oh.
John should leave early.
How many?
Cal is the host, he can't leave.
I can log off for this. Yeah,
Or maybe
how many commissioners are here? I hadn't
There's
noticed.
not a quorum, so I think it's fine for that reason. But I just think that like ultimately it's going to be something you'll have to vote on. So I'm not supposed to communicate with you.
Mute myself and
Well, I'll log off for now, Paula, so you can
Wait,
stay on.
John have to log off, or would leaving the room suffice?
Well,
I think if they just turn, I mean, from what we've done and other things, if they just turn off their camera and mic, I think it's fine.
yeah, okay, I will do that. All right, thank you. Thanks for pointing that out.
and
Yeah,
As long
all
as
right.
And
5 people.
yeah, the rest of us will be facilitating.
Okay, so I'm going to start sort of the basic idea is that, and I want to kind of present it in the most simple way possible. Like, why is it the property owners get to decide who we have as a part of our leases at the end of the day? Like, I think that fundamental question is sort of what triggered the idea for this. I think that like the reality is that there's other limitations in the law. There's things that kind of give them the power to do so. But my goal with this policy idea is to really sort of attack that premise, to attack that idea and say that like, look, tenants, if you're paying your rent on time, if you're following your lease, if you're doing everything you need to do to be a good tenant, you should be able to have anyone live with you that you want to live with you. And I think that there's going to be challenges. There's going to be issues in the law that's going to prevent people from doing that. But I think we as a city of Berkeley and we as rent board commissioners and we as elected officials should be allowing tenants to choose who's residing with them. And there's a number of really important benefits that I think come from it. So like first, people are dealing with COVID-19. They've lost income. They are trying to find new living arrangements. They're trying to find ways that they can sort of reduce their costs. People recognize the fact that at the end of the day, they still have to pay the rent, even if it's delayed when they need to pay it. And so giving someone the right to say like, look, I have a lease. I'm able to pay my rent right now. I can have my family members live with me for the next like 5 months or 3 months, however long this pandemic lasts, and say like, look, like they should be able to come live with me. I'm paying my rent on time. Why is there a limit for them coming to live with me? I think that's one of the big ideas is that it helps to address partly the COVID crisis, but even afterwards, we see a lot of sort of like racial and family discrimination. Like people we know, they lose access to housing. It happens all the time. They need a place to stay either temporarily or more long-term. And I think that as a basic idea, like if we believe in the right to housing, we should have the right to let people live in our housing if we have access to it already. I think it's like low-hanging fruit. It's we have people who are like really fighting to get access to housing. And I think like even, granted, like my issue areas, I mostly focus on tenants' rights. My day job is working as a tenants' rights attorney. So I don't want to speak necessarily for the homeless community, but I think that one of the challenges I've heard other homeless advocates speaking on is that people get access to housing, but then they have like friends and family who also need access to housing too. And it becomes a barrier and a challenge for them because then they feel like, okay, I've gotten housing now, but like, and I think there's like a little bit of guilt that comes along with that. And so at the end of the day, I think that if we sort of attack this idea as a community and say like, look, if you are living in a space and you are doing everything you need to do to be a good tenant, you should be able to have other people live with you. And that's essentially the idea that I'm looking to advocate for. I think that there's going to be challenges in how we implement it. But I also think there's like very clear authority within the rent board right now to at least make a issue. So right now, basically states you can add subtenants to your lease up to one of two numbers, either the number of people you are allowed to based on your contract or a number of people set by the authority of the rent board. To my knowledge, the rent board hasn't actually ever set that number before. And so what I want to do as a rent board commissioner is basically just say like, look, let's make this number be as high as we possibly can, like whatever is safe and healthy and meets all the habitability requirements for housing. Let's let our tenants be able to add additional sublessees up to that number. And that's the thing that I think that we kind of clearly have authority to do right now. But ultimately, I think I want to have it be a broader discussion and something that we talk about with the city council together to say that like, look, you know, there's ways we can change this law. Right now, for people who aren't familiar, if your lease doesn't say that you can't basically assign it or sublet it to someone else, you have pretty much do so. And that's just what the law is already. And I think that there's opportunity and possibility to expand that and really impact people's lives. And so I'm bringing this to you all because I'm, one, sort of trying to build code around this idea. Two, it's a thing that I campaigned on, so I want to give you an update on it. And I also want to get feedback on the idea as well. I think that they're like, it's a new thing. It's a new concept to a degree. And I kind of want feedback on what you think some of the challenges might be if we were to do something like this. And I think that I just want to kind of open it up for discussion. I have another idea too that actually didn't get agendized, but I do want to mention it as well. If it will permit me, because I think it will be relevant soon as well too. But I kind of wanted to just for feedback, and I see there's an question, so I want to address those too. So let me look at those now.
So where are the questions?
So in the chat, I see one that says, please make subleases exempt from just as owners are exempt. It's a share space, including. So essentially what I'm trying to do and what my ultimate idea and goal is that like people who are tenants should have the right to sublease the apartment as much as they want to, without the owner being able to say, like right now, a lot of the laws say that if the owner makes a reasonable objection to it, then they can prevent tenants from subleasing. Literally want to take away that right entirely. I think it should be entirely up to the tenants to decide to sublease the apartment. But I know that there's going to be different other like so clear for.
I'd like to ask, are you talking about changing local laws only? Are there any state laws that are in the way at this time?
It's not that there's state laws in the way necessarily. Kind of like right now at the state level, there's a law that basically says that if your lease doesn't, let me try to be as clear as possible because it's like a speaking in a negative. The state law says that if your lease doesn't prohibit you from renting to other people, you have the absolute right to rent to whoever you want as a subleasee and to assign your lease to whoever you want to. The problem is most leases that we have right now specifically say you can't do that. So I think at the state level, what we would need would be a change in the law that says, actually, you know what, if you sign a lease, the tenants have the right absolutely to sublease and to have other people live in the space. There's not a law that says that right now, to my knowledge. I would support that at the state level as well. But right now I'm a rent board commissioner and I have the authority to do this in this particular space. So I want to do what I can do in the place that I actually have influence in. But I would agree that we do need changes at the state level as well.
Would if the rent board made the change, would it be only for rent controlled units?
Probably, but I also, as a rent board commissioner, I get to sit on the 4x4, which is a group of both city council members as well as rent board commissioners. And so I would put forth the idea there too, and say that like city council, you and the city of Berkeley should pass this as well. The city of Berkeley could also do this. I mean, it wouldn't just apply to rent controlled units as well. There might be limits for like maybe like Section 8 tenancies. Like at the end of the day, the next step for this idea is really discussing it in the committee form and having feedback from the legal staff of the rent board and also the legal staff from the city. So I think there's going to be other issues that might come up that other people have thought of that I haven't anticipated yet. So I just want to be clear with like kind of the next steps and the issues. But I do think that it's something that the city as a whole could pass more than just for rent controlled units. And that's my personal legal analysis as an attorney as well, but also as an elected official.
Are there other hands raised? I don't see any. Okay, Daya?
Even though I am dealing with a Section 8 voucher, and I'm dealing with that situation now, my thing is the person above me, I believe they sublease their apartment, and the person that they have up there now is just horrible. So how would you deal with that so that the person who's living in their apartment with their lease, and then they put someone up above them who's stopping them from sleeping and enjoying their living situation, how would you stop that from happening?
So I think that's a great question. Realistically, I'm just gonna like my whole thing is just being honest as much as possible. Like realistically, I think there's a challenge that's gonna happen more with a policy like this. That I can like beat around the bush around it. That's just a reality. There, however, is a separate legal process that also exists right now. That's like basically the public like nuisance sort of issues and private nuisance issues. If you if there's a tenant that's in a building that's really harassing you or disturbing your peace, preventing you from being able to enjoy your space, you can already sue them right now to say that they are violating just basic obligations as a tenant. And this law change that. There's still a place to do that. There's still a way to do that. Less likely than most other circumstances. Like most tenants aren't going to be in that situation. I mean, hopefully, this is why I'm also discussing with you all too. I don't think that that's going to be the case, but I think ultimately it's going to have more benefit than harm. And so I are probably going to be situations like that. That's probably going to happen.
Other questions? Matthew? Did you raise your hand or something? Your space lit up. Okay.
I am technologically incapable of raising my hand as a co-host, so I have definitely not done that.
Okay. Okay, Igor has a question.
Yeah, and Matthew, you should be able to raise your hand as a co-host. Zoom has updated settings, but what, Xavier or Commissioner Johnson, what was your other proposal?
So the other one is probably, it's even more complex, and I think it's gonna be more challenging, but the idea, like I remember when I was campaigning, I was talking a lot about the idea of like rental forgiveness, and I don't think it's probably within the scope of the authority for the rent board to pass something like that, but I do think, like I've asked the city staff and I asked the rent board staff, has the city council discussed who has the legal authority to actually pass rental forgiveness? And what I mean by that is there's lots of people right now who've lost their jobs. They don't have the money to pay the rent. They're getting a lot of debt that's just building up and building up and building up. And I think that like the right thing to do is to just forgive that debt, and the right thing to do both for, honestly, both for tenants, but also for people who have a mortgage as well. And I don't know personally, like this is not directly my area of law that I practice in, but some level of government has the authority to pass rental forgiveness and mortgage forgiveness. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but I think we as the city council, I take it back, we as commissioners on the rent board, city council members, state of California, the federal government, all should be having that conversation, and we should like work together to figure out who has the authority to do it. Because I know there's so many times that like people who are activists talk about ideas that they want to see done, and every level of government's like, oh, well, like the city council members are like, oh, well, the state and the federal government need to do this. And the state and the federal government's like, oh, well, the local government needs to do this. And so like my commitment and what I'm doing is I'm putting on the agenda for our next 4x4 meeting, a discussion of like who has the authority to pass rental forgiveness. And if it's not the city council, I think we as the city of Berkeley and we as rent board commissioners need to write a letter to our state officials and our federal officials that says, you need to pass this. This is what we need, make it happen. And so I don't want people running around saying like Xavier's promising that your rent's going to be forgiven. Like that's not necessarily true. If the city council can do it and if the rent board could do it, I think that yes, I will vote for that. But in the event that we can't, I think we should be writing letters to our levels of government who can do it. And certainly I think at least the federal government can do it. Whether that happens or not, that's a different question. But I certainly think that at least they have the authority to do it.
Okay. Are there
And so my ask for this group is two things. So I have 2 meetings that are coming up where these should be on the agenda. And so my goal is to kind of like generate people to kind of at least do public comment. If you can take a moment of your time to really just speak before we discuss these on the agenda. And I wanted to flag the meetings that we have so that you could do so. And I will also send this as a follow-up, like maybe email to the leadership of the Berkeley Tenants Union as well. But the right to rent idea is going to come up at the next AGA and IRA and registration meeting for the rent board, which is going to be on May 20th at 5 p.m. And then the idea of rent forgiveness will come up at the 4x4 meeting, which will be a little bit sooner at the April 28th meeting of the 4x4 committee, which is again for rent board commissioners and for city council members.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you, Igor, for, I don't remember the name of the AGA committee because it's like 8 different parts of the name. So thank you for putting that down there.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And so we'll get the information out to our membership and ask them to attend these meetings or at least write a letter. Some of them still work, you know. Do you have anything else you wanted to tell us, Xavier?
That's it for now. I hopefully have some other things that will be in the works down the road, but these are kind of my main priorities for now. But I'm open, like, I feel like with COVID, I loved before COVID, I loved going out to community groups and like talking to people in person. And quite honestly, like over Zoom, it makes me lose my mind. But I want to be available. So if people have like thoughts or feedback or like want to connect, generally, I'm happy to connect. I just hate the format of Zoom, mostly after a year of having to deal with it. But I'm just trying to just keep it real.
Okay, well, I guess if we need to contact you, we can do that through the rent board, right? You have a rent board address.
Yes, through the rent
Email
board,
address.
or you can do it to my like campaign email address, which I'll put that in the chat as well.
Okay, thank you.
Honestly, the campaign one is probably better because I check it personally. The rent board one, we have like the rent board, because this is probably too much information, but like for when you email the rent board email address, because if you're talking about your specific tenancy, it creates a conflict of interest sometimes. So we can't actually, like, we basically can't vote on your appeal if you tell us too much information about your case before we get a chance to actually discuss it. So I think the campaign one is sometimes better because like it goes directly to me. If I respond to it, it'll be me. But at the same time, like, don't give me a lot of specifics on your particular situation so that I can still vote in favor of whatever you need down the road. But here's the email though.
Assuming, of course, that the tenant is in the right, which they almost always are.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I don't want you accidentally qualifying yourself from every case in the future.
All right. If we have no more questions on that, we'll move along to our next speaker, who is Igor. Igor Trega is going to tell us about current bills in the state legislature that BTU is.
Dawn and Paula should come back. Sorry, I was just yelling that at them. They come back.
Oh, thank you, Matthew. Igor is a former rent board commissioner, among many other things. He's also a member of the BTU steering committee. And along with me, he attends most of the Housing Now Zoom meetings where they have very thorough discussions of both housing and tenant bills in the state legislature. So Igor is going to give us a summary of the bills that BTU has either supported or is considering supporting. Igor?
Thank you so much, Julia. And I had this all ready to go, and I then did not properly copy and paste it. So in a minute, you will see in the chat a full compendium of bills on which we have taken a position. Now oh, here it is. Wonderful. Now I just wanted to, I'm going to make this super short since we're running out of time. This has been a really busy legislative cycle. And we're right in the midst of committee here. Now it's ever been in weighing in, not just at the local level, but also at the state level. There's one big thing that well, there's too many big things. There's a thing that's hanging over our heads right now and the heads of the 10 million tenants in California, which is an eviction cliff if the state legislature and the governor's office fail to extend the provisions of Senate Bill 91. SB 91 is, to say it's an imperfect bill would be giving it too much credit, honestly. It was written basically at the behest of moneyed interests, and there was very little negotiation done. It was done at the very end of last year / the very beginning of January. So there is going to be an opportunity in 2 months, or well, really now, to continue to push concepts that are absolutely essential, like cancel rent, like having real rent forgiveness. And so we will be keeping you updated on that. But what I wanted to do right now is just run through a number of bills on which we have taken a position. And this is, I'm dropping them in the chat, but I will talk through them really fast. And if you have any questions, just raise your hand. So AB 20, which is not specifically a tenant bill, but it's amendments to the Political Reform Act of 1974 around campaign contributions. It's also called the Clean Money Act of 2021. And what I just mentioned with SB 91 is a great example of the real estate industry and big landlords really lobbying the legislature and legislators. And it's a little more, they're more sophisticated than providing a big wad of cash at closed door meetings. But there are all sorts of ways in which they have been contributing sometimes to shadow groups. And this is going to enable the spotlight to shine more brightly when that happens. AB 81 deals with the concept of homelessness funding. There is a bill called, it's also known as Bring California Home Act. Happy to talk more if there are any questions about what it does, and this is true for all of these. AB 328 is the reentry housing program. AB 464 is enhanced infrastructure financing districts, and this allows for more facilities to be used to be designated for affordable housing projects. There's a really key bill that we're supporting, AB 1199, Homes for Families and Corporate Monopoly Transparency Excise Tax. So basically, this is a tax on large landlords and large corporations. Right now, it is stuck in committee. So you will be getting an email from us contacting or tweeting at or emailing the office of Assembly Member Autumn Burke, who is the chair of the committee in which this is stuck right now. AB 339 has to do with open meetings. One of the things that has been really helpful, like the only good thing that happened in this pandemic is that this has really opened up Sacramento. Like, you can literally call into any proceedings in Sacramento and provide your endorsement or your opposition to bad bills, your endorsement of good bills in the meeting. And you don't have to get in a car or on a bus. And yeah, and for local as well. We also have a support and concept position on AB 387, also known as the Social Housing Act of 2021. Then there's a bill we are supporting, SB 965, charging in multifamily housing. This would allow tenants like me to be able to finally switch over from my gas-guzzling old internal combustion engine to an electric vehicle. Right now, chargers are something that is the domain of homeowners, and really there are not that many programs for tenants in existing construction, and this would help that issue. A really, really important bill that we are supporting is AB 854, which would reform the Ellis Act. As a reminder, the Ellis Act is a really horrible bill that was supposed to protect small landlords, but it's been weaponized over the last 30 years. And really, it's just a convenient way under the pretense of taking a unit off the market to kick out the tenants that may be living there. This is going to not completely get rid of the Ellis Act, but it's going to put some significant guardrails on it, so that's important. And we have now started to see Ellis Act evictions in Berkeley. They were at an all-time low during the first year of the pandemic, but now they're starting again. There's there's also a bill that's not in the chat, but it's a really important one, AB 1188, that we have also endorsed. And what that is it's the second attempt by Assemblymember Wicks and other members of the Bay Area legislature to pass a rental registry, which is something that Berkeley has also started to work on. Measure MM, its passage was the first step of that last year, but this would allow that to happen statewide. There is a bill that is not on this list, and I would like to see, because it is a very important bill, if there were any objections to moving it forward. It's AB 1487, known as the Statewide Eviction Prevention and Defense Act. And basically, this deals with the concept that everyone is entitled to legal support. Every tenant is entitled to legal support when they're facing eviction. And this would allow the mechanism and the funding to be able to do that. Happy to answer any questions, but I just wanted to ask if there are any objections to us signing on in support of Assembly Bill 1487. Again, that's statewide tenant representation.
No.
And I'm hearing no objections. So I'm going to pass it back over to Julia, unless there are any questions that I can answer.
I don't see any hands. Okay, we will be posting in our newsletter a list of these bills and why we support them.
One quick important announcement, a friendly reminder to everyone to please sign in to the on the attendance sheet. Because we need to know that you're here. And I've just reposted the link. Only about less than half the people on this call have signed in. So please, please sign in so that we know you're here and we're able to record you as here for attendance purposes. So please sign in. That chat again is I posted the Google form link in the chat just now. It's the most recent post. So please just fill that out if you haven't already.
Okay, moving along. Matthew, you're up next to talk about upzoning for
Great.
5 minutes.
Okay. Yes. Give me 1 second. Oops, I'm sorry. I just need to pull up some written stuff about that. Just give me 1 minute.
Oh shoot, it's almost 5 o'clock.
Okay. All right. So, yeah. So as folks may be aware, there has been work by the city council to change our city zoning laws. So for past few months, BTU members have had a clear and consistent message: no upzoning without affordability, no to gentrification, yes to affordable housing. Unfortunately, the mayor and most of the city council have refused to listen. Earlier this month, towards the end of last month, the city council voted to advance the proposal by Mayor Arreguín and Councilors Drosky, Kurserwani, and Taplin to upzone the city without requiring any affordable housing whatsoever. Although there are now some amendments at the meeting, none of
Are you finished, Matthew?
Yes.
Okay. Paula Laverde is a member of the Rent Board Commission. She is a former chair of the Rent Board, and she is going to present to us on 2 topics. 1, an update on TOPA, and 2, an update on SB 591, which is the COVID Tenant Relief Act that has been discussed earlier in this meeting. Paula.
Hey, everybody. So it's almost 5 o'clock. And I just literally got back into the system because the system kicked me off. So an update on TOPA. As everybody may be aware, TOPA is called the Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act. It has 4 main components. It allows tenants to have the first opportunity to make an offer on the building or on their unit and where they're living. If they decide, they can turn over their rights to a qualified organization like a land trust. And so it gives them so they have the first opportunity of offer and refusal. 2, it extends time limits. So with lots of properties and homes going for cash really quick, this time limits levels the playing field for tenants and qualified organizations to negotiate a contract to secure the financing and close the deal. So, and then the third one is technical assistance. Tenants will get assistance from a supportive partner, such as a tenants' rights nonprofit, a legal service provider, to help them complete all the steps required to purchase the building. The supportive partners will help the tenants understand the financing and the ownership options when they're trying to buy. And then number 4 is permanent affordability. So if a tenant group or a qualified organizations, they will get subsidies. The subsidies require that the TOPA buyers keep their property affordable for all the time. You know, if they sell it, there has to be continued affordability. Qualified organization, if they're the TOPA buyers, it requires them to commit to keeping the properties purchased by TOPA permanent affordable. So it's really good. So what is happening now? On Monday, April 26th, on Monday, April 26th, there's going to be a special meeting at the Land Use Committee. There's no time set. If you go to the website, there's no time set, but we do know that it's Monday, May 26th. The legislation is going to be looked at. It was introduced back in March. At the March meeting, they had over 60 people come in to give public comment, 3 hours of public comment. So it's really important for us as tenants to support TOPA, to make sure it's not watered down. You know, so you know, there are about a minimum of 4,400 single family homes in Berkeley that are rental units. And TOPA would allow those tenants to have the opportunity to purchase their homes. Now, TOPA does not impact the sale price. If the landlord wants to sell the property for $2 million, that's their right. But it's an opportunity for the tenants to get the time and to organize themselves to be able to buy the house or give their rights to, like I said, a qualified organization, and then they always can keep the housing affordable. So like I said, it's coming back on the Land Use Committee on April 26th. And so we want all our tenant members to be, if they can, to give public comment and to write a letter. We don't want the law watered down. And if you have any questions, or if you're interested in finding out more about TOPA, you can go to yes2topa.org, and let me put that in the chat. I can spell .org. So to find out more information. Now regarding SB 91, Igor.
Oh, and one other thing, right above what Paula just posted is the link to the Facebook event for April 26th. So you can use that. You go there, mark yourself as going, and you can share that with everybody to help get the word out, and also for a sample email and talking points.
Thank you. Then the second thing I'm going to talk about real quick is SB 91. 91. It's, it provides financial support for tenants behind their rent and utilities because of COVID-19. So the Alameda County Housing Emergency Rental Assistance Program, called ERAP, is helping income eligible households pay rent and utilities for their past due. Now, phase 1 just started March 17th, and it is prioritizing tenants and households making less than 30% of CPI, of AMI. That means that a family of 4 that's making less than $41,000 a year are taking priority right now in this phase 1. I want to let you know that the Berkeley Tenants Union on April 24th at 3 o'clock. Oh my gosh, I just forgot the time. Next Saturday. On
somebody's making a weird noise.
It's probably me in my paper. So let me make sure. Yes, on April 24th from 3 to 5 p.m. The Berkeley Tenants Union will be holding a workshop on SB 91 and Alameda County's program to help tenants who need assistance with their rental housing and utilities because they've been impacted by COVID. So we'll be sending out more information. If anyone that if you know people in Alameda County who need assistance, please share our Facebook event with them, because they will be providing that information. The only 2 cities that we are not providing information for in Alameda County is Oakland and Fremont, because they have their own program. They've got their own program to deal, to assist with tenants. So it's, I've got 1 minute left if anybody has any questions. Great. I see no hands raised.
So John, are you raising your hand?
No, I am not.
Oh, well,
And
what?
I just posted the link to the workshop in the chat.
Okay.
Thank you. So anyway, so we
All
have a
right.
workshop next Saturday from 3 to 5 on April 24th. And then on Monday, April 26th, TOPA is coming back to the Land Use Committee meeting. Time is yet to be determined, but hopefully our membership can come out and support TOPA. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. And we're almost to the end. It's Matthew's turn again. He's going to give us an update on the ASUC elections and also on why we need to tune into the next city council meeting. Matthew?
Yes, and before I do that, I want to again reiterate that everybody should please sign in if you haven't already done so. We're a few more folks have signed in, but we really need everybody to sign in, please. So I just post that again in the chat. So yeah, anyway, thank you so much. So I'm just going to briefly share my screen for a couple of seconds. Yeah, so the ASUC stands for the Associated Students of the University of California. It's basically the student government at UC Berkeley. On behalf of BTU, the steering committee made endorsements in some races for the use in those elections, which took place earlier this month. We endorsed 2 candidates for president, 2 candidates for external affairs vice president, 1 candidate for academic affairs vice president, 1 candidate for transfer representative, and 1 candidate for senator. In all those races, candidate we endorsed was elected. Can't technically say 100% of our candidates were elected because in 2 races, president and external affairs vice president, we endorsed 2 candidates because we liked two of the candidates that were running. But we can't say in all, but that's just a technicality. So we had a 100% success rate for these endorsed candidates. We did some stuff to help them, like by giving them the ability to use the BTU name and logo. Made some posts for them and some tweets for them. So they were all elected. We're really so Chaka was elected ASUC president. Ria was elected ASUC external affairs vice president. James Whiteshirt was elected academic affairs vice president. Gabriel was elected transfer representative, and Amanda Hill was elected as a senator. So that's really excited. We're really excited to work with them to expand our outreach to students. Essentially, because essentially all students are tenants, and we really need to make sure that we are organizing all tenants, and we're really excited to work with them. They had really great platforms. We interviewed them, two rounds of questionnaires with them, so we're really excited. So that's it on that item. The second thing is the City Council is returning from recess this Tuesday, and there's a really important meeting this Tuesday at 6 p.m. There's a really bad, dangerous item on the City Council's agenda. It's item 33, and it does two things. So the first thing it does is it eliminates the ability of people to give to submit written public comment by email that is then read aloud by city staff. Since the pandemic happened, City Council has been letting people give public comment either via Zoom/telephone or by emailing their public comment in that's written aloud. And this has really expanded the ability of people to give public comment. You don't have to show up at a meeting for hours and hours. You can stay at home and give public comment. But simply reducing public comment, the ability to give public comment, either permanently or temporarily, to doing it via Zoom is not fair. It's not accessible, because that still requires you to stay on the call until it's time to give public comment, which, first of all, that can last hours and hours and hours. And and people have other things they have to do. They might have other meetings they need to be at. They might need to be watching their kids. They might need to go to bed. Et cetera, or they might have work. They might be working really, really late at work, or they might have night shifts. And furthermore, some meetings happen during the day. A couple years ago, the City Council created committees like Land Use Committee of the City Council that meets, and all of these committees meet during the middle of the day. So if you have a 9-to-5 job, or you're a student who has classes during the daytime, it'll be impossible for you to give public comment unless you can continue sending in public comment by email. Because again, like for example, the Land Use Committee meets which is where Topa charge meets at 10:30 in the morning. So by removing the ability for people to send in public comment that is emailed and then read aloud, it's going to significantly reduce the ability of tenants who are overwhelmingly working class folks to give public comment. And that's really unfair. And what's really sad is that this item claims that, it doesn't matter because people can still directly email the City Council and stuff. But by that logic, we should just get rid of public comment altogether, and everybody can just email the mayor and the City Council. I don't think anybody here thinks that we should get rid of public comment. There's a big difference between simply emailing your stuff to the mayor and the City Council and having it read out loud. When it's read out loud, it's, the whole public is aware of what everybody said, and they can and it's much easier to hold elected officials accountable, and they are under much more pressure. So it's really important